Hey there, everyone out listening in the YouTube land. This is the Kelly Berger podcast. I'm Kelly Berger. Once again, we have Darren Berger on tech support,
Hello.
and today is like a very special episode. We are on podcast episode number 10. Made it to the double digits, and our guest today is New York comic Cal Murata. Hey there, Cal.
Kelly, thank you for having me. Thank you for bringing me on for the double digit extravaganza. I appreciate it. Congrats on 10 episodes. This is great. I'm glad to be here.
Thank you. I figured like a double digit is like a special number for a comic because that's usually how we usually get paid.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it's great to have you on, Cal. Do you live in New York now?
Yeah, I moved to New York. What is it? It's like mid February. I moved to New York in May, so it's almost a year. It's like 9 months or whatever the math, almost 10 months, I would say. So yeah, a little bit. When did you leave Minneapolis? It was a little bit after you left.
Let's see. I left Minneapolis in October of 2021.
Okay, so actually I left way after you left, so that was a bad timing on my part. But yes, I'm one like you where I was in Minneapolis for a bit and then I moved to a bigger city.
Hmm. How do you like the New York scene so far?
It's good. It's very different. I don't know. It's you can't really describe it to someone until they come here because like we know a bunch of people who have like moved out to like New York and stuff, but
Mhm.
everything they say, you're like, ah, I feel like they're being dramatic and stuff like that. But then you move here and you're like, oh shit, comedy is way harder than you would expect it to be. So
Yep.
it's definitely a learning curve, but yeah, I feel like you just got to find your footing, which I'm trying to figure out how to do that right now. So,
Yep. Have you been able to hit like any wild New York mics, like some that are taking place in like a subway or a laundromat?
nothing. So I have done a show in a laundromat. There's actually a really popular Brooklyn show. That do you know Max Hornstein? Do you remember him from Minneapolis?
The name sounds familiar. I'm trying to put a face to it.
Yeah, no worries. But he's actually a Minneapolis comic too, who moved out here. He runs a great show at a laundromat. So I was able to do one of those. I'm trying to think a crazy mic that I did. I feel like all the crazy mics died like when we started coming back from COVID. But I remember I used to see videos of like mics in the park, like people doing mics in like a fountain and stuff like that. So laundromat show is like the furthest I've gone when it comes to crazy shit.
Yeah, I did a couple of crazy mics down in Austin. Like we did like a street mic, which I know there's a couple in New York.
I haven't seen any. I don't know if they're still going on and stuff, but yes, no, I remember seeing pictures in Austin as well as New York of like people just pulling up on the side of like a park or something like that and hoping the people gather.
Yeah, I did one in the street of Austin. It was just like a exercise in crowd work because the audience would just walk by and you just have like 2 seconds of interaction with them.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah, it
just
seems a lot like do you guys have barking at all in Austin? I don't know if you guys do barking for like clubs and stuff like that, but that's what I would say is most comparable to like a street mic.
Yep, I did some barking a couple of weeks ago on Sixth Street.
Yeah. Oh, wow. On Sixth Street. How is that? That's like the busy street in Austin, right?
Very busy. They every weekend they shut it down. So I was out there a couple of weeks ago, just barking, just and I'm a very shy, introverted guy, so barking is not usually my cup of tea. Usually
Yeah. No, that
most comedy shows would put that task to like the younger, attractive comics.
what do you mean? How you don't think you're one of the young, hot, upcoming comics?
I meant like this like an attractiveness. Like they would
No,
usually
I
have.
that's what I'm talking about too, Kelly. I think you're an attractive guy. I would put you out front to bark for my club.
Yeah, I probably should have worked the gay street.
There you go. Yeah, exactly. So, but yeah, there you go. I mean, barking is a good way to you like you said, you're very introverted, but that
Mhm.
really makes you come out of your shell and show how desperate you are for a comedy show. But still, like, yeah, it's barking is an experience where you would never think of doing something like that in a city like Minneapolis, but in Austin or New York, you're like, oh fuck it, I'll do it for stage time. I don't care.
Yep, and like you talked about like, the difference between like going from Minneapolis to New York, like that transition from like a smaller scene to like a hub?
Yeah. Yeah, it's in in Minneapolis, or like probably any smaller scene can go for this, but like there you can see progression. You can see like, okay, if I do enough mics and I just get good, I can, either work at one of the small clubs or get on all these indie shows and stuff like that. That progression is very visible in the small scene, but in New York, it's like it, there's like no like paths to success. I mean, I think unlimited paths to success, which is why it's so hard because you're like, I don't know which way to go. You're like, I can make sketches and try and go viral on social media, or you're like, I can try and hang out at one club like every single day instead of doing mics and try and get in that way. And there's so many comics here doing so many different things that like you don't know which way to
Yep.
go. So I think that's the biggest thing is like there's no clear path
Yep.
to
The paradox of choice.
right, exactly. Yeah. It's again, you move to New York because you're like, oh, there's unlimited opportunities. And then you get there, you're like, well, fuck, I don't know which opportunity to take.
Yep. And also like every mic you almost go to is almost filled with strangers, which
Yeah, for sure. I guess through my experience in New York, a lot of it's mostly comedians. I would say 98% of the open mics I've done here are all just in front of comics. And it's hard because they're focused on their sets or they don't want to listen or they're distracted. And again, I completely understand when you have to watch like 4 hours of open mic comedy a day, it's hard to pay attention to the person on stage. So
mm-hmm.
again, in that way too, it's a much more slow development, I would say, than a Minneapolis where you get Sisyphus or CCU once a week. So you're like, okay, even if every other mic this week sucks, I know I have one where I'll do jokes in front of a real audience. Where in New York, you don't know when that's ever going to come.
Right. And
Yeah.
yeah, and you got in Minneapolis, you got like Sisyphus and Acme where you can sort of bring out your polished material and
Right. Yeah, and exactly. And it's like even and then you do shows in front of real people more often in Minneapolis just because the sample
mm-hmm.
size for people they need is much smaller. So you do your polished material at those shows, you do good. You're like, oh, this is why I like comedy because I can make people laugh. But then when you do only open mics for so long, you're like, oh fuck, am I even funny anymore? You kind of go through that kind of thing, that kind of progression. So
Yep. And have you had any like any wild New York experiences, like any crazy shenanigans like on the subways or any like
no, I'm blessed enough, fucking knock on wood, because nothing too crazy has happened. I mean, obviously you see like a crazy guy on the subway from every here and there, but nothing crazy has happened to me specifically. Um I recently last week though was like a quintessential New York week, I would say, because like one day I was walking down the street and a rat like ran over my foot, like it legit touched my foot and I felt it in my shoe. Like I felt like not like in my shoe, but like I could feel where
just
it touched
something?
on my foot for like the rest of the night, even after I had taken my shoe off and it like barely skimmed me. But that was like a scarring moment.
Was
And
that
then
out in the
later
street or like in the subway?
that was in the streets, yeah. So
Mm.
it's funny. Usually at night, and especially like if trash days the next day. So if there's like trash on the street, there's rats always running back and forth down the sidewalk. And usually they don't get in your way, but for whatever reason, this time it like literally just ran into my foot. And like I said, I could feel it there for the rest of the night. That's how like fucking jumped back I was. But so that happened, and then later that week, which I would say is the reason why it was the quintessential New York week, is I was jogging at this park in Brooklyn, and I got stopped by this like production assistant because they were filming Law and Order SVU. So that was pretty cool. That like that's a very New York thing to happen where
Yeah.
you eventually get like you'll eventually stumble upon to the set of Law and Order because they have so many fucking seasons and they film all over New York. So it was cool that I had a rat hit my foot and then I had to be stopped from jogging for 5 minutes because they were filming Law and Order.
Well, I'm glad you walked into like a filming of the show Law and Order, on an actual like real life Law and Order.
Yes, I mean, I feel like that might happen sometime soon because it's New York. But like I
Mhm.
said, I'm lucky enough where I haven't seen anything super fucking crazy happen. Um, I guess one time, if you don't mind me telling this story, this is crazy in like comedy terms, not like New York, like, oh, there's crazy people here. But one of the reasons you move to New York is because like you get the proximity to so many like great comedians, right? Like
Hmm.
Austin's the same way where you have Rogan's Club and like his kind of crew. And
Yep.
so you have more of a chance to, get seen by them or like be able to watch them. My friends came to visit like the past summer, and um, they're huge they're huge Shane Gillis fans. They love
Hmm.
Shane Gillis. I'm a huge fan too. And so we get tickets to the cellar, and it's just like a lineup, a regular cellar lineup. I know a few of the comics, but it's like no one's super super famous, so it's just going to be like a regular cellar show. And we're waiting in line at the cellar, and then like this black town car pulls up, and my friends are all like joking around. They're like, "Oh, dude, what if that's like Shane Gillett?" Like they're joking around because like they would love if he like popped in and did a set. And we're all like, "Oh, dude, shut up. That's just some random guy." And then 10 minutes later, the cars of the doors open, and my friend like looks and points. He's like, "Holy shit, that's Shane Gillis!" And Shane Gillis gets out of the car, which was so cool just to like see him in person, especially for them because they're huge fans. Um,
Looks like
so
your
whatever,
friend
we go.
called it.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, he like I hate the term, but he did. Did he manifest it? Maybe
Mhm.
he did. It's possible. But so, anyways, we go into the show, and like I said, it's a bunch of great comics, but no one like super famous that like my friends who are just regular comedy fans would know. So as the show's going on, I think there's like 6 comics per show, so there's like a little bit part of us that are like, oh, maybe Shane's gonna pop in, but there's like 2 comics left on the lineup, and the host announces he's like, hey guys, we only have 2 comics left, and so all of us are like, oh fuck, he's not gonna pop in, whatever. And then the second to last comic gets off. And then he's about to bring up the last comic, and then the host goes, "We actually have a special drop-in guest." And then my friend sees Shane like in the doorway and like grabs my arm. He's like, "No fucking way!" Like, I wonder if he's gonna go up. And then the host brought Shane up. So
Nice.
that was super cool. So it's like it wasn't like a crazy New York like crazy guy experience, but it was like oh, this is why New York is like one of the best places to do comedies because you don't get shit like that every single day. So
Yep.
that was like a super cool, crazy thing to happen, I would say.
Yep. Have you been able to perform at the open mic at the Comedy Cellar, or do you know what their system is like?
I don't know. I don't think they have an open mic there, to be honest. I'm not 100% sure, but as far as I know, I think you need to be like to get in there, I think you need to be like recommended by like a few people that work there.
Hmm. Like I seen a couple of sets from Mike earlier over there.
Yeah. Mike is. I'm pretty sure Mike works there and is past there. But yeah, he's really really funny. I haven't ran into him actually at all since I've moved out here. I saw him. It's funny. I saw him more in Minneapolis after he moved to New York than I have when I have actually moved to New York. So, but that's just to goes to show you how big the city is.
Hmm.
That you you can live in the same city as a comic, and never see them for almost an entire year. So.
That's one of the great things of like moving to a bigger city is like, oh yeah, if I run into someone I don't rub well with, I just go to a different place and almost never see them again.
Right. Exactly. So that is nice too, where you do get the good thing is, like I said, you're really only performing to comics, but because there's so many comics here, you're like, okay, at least this group of comics at this open mic haven't seen these jokes yet. So versus
Mhm.
Minneapolis, where it's like the same group of people going to the same one. So you feel like you have to like you can't really refine as much. So I agree. Yeah. If you see someone who you think hates you, you might never have to see them again for like 7 months, which is great.
Mhm. Yep. And else, and here's something I recently learned about you. I saw you did a TED talk once.
Yeah, so uh I did I dabbled in stand up in college. I didn't really do it that much. I probably did like one set a month at like an open mic or like at my college had like a student organization where we like performed stand up and stuff like that. But through that I wrote like a decent 5 minutes when I was in college. Well, decent for the time,
Hmm.
for barely doing stand up. And then I was actually able to open for Ken Jeong. If you know Ken Jeong, who's like on like all the Fox TV shows and from The Hangover.
Hmm.
So that was
The
cool.
doctor.
Yes, Dr. Ken, exactly. Yeah.
Hmm.
So I actually got to open up for him. Um, because the student org that like put on all this campus events wanted like a student to open, so I was able to open for him, which was amazing. And then from that, some student like pretty much just I don't know what the right word, they like recommended me, they like submitted me for like a the TEDx event at my college. And then from there, um the TEDx people I just had me apply and share what I would do. And then they were like, hey, we don't need you to do like a regular TEDx talk. We would just love to have you do like 5 minutes and we'll film it and stuff like that. So yeah, it was a very, very cool experience for sure.
All right, because yeah, I didn't watch your TED talk yet, so I didn't know what it was about. So it was just you just warming up for Dr. Ken.
Oh no, so they were two different events, but
Okay.
the TEDx talk came from opening for Dr. Ken. But yeah, you know, I mean, listen, it's 5 minutes of like stand up from like my first real year doing it, so you wouldn't there's no reason for you to have to watch it. But if you want to see how uncomfortable I was a first year stand up in front of uh way too many people than he should be performing in front of, then yeah, you should watch it for sure.
Yeah, imagine like I know like TED talks are like a big deal. Like so it's people watch them on the internet. Like I imagine like an intense amount of stage fright before doing performing one of those things.
Yeah, it was weird. So again, I'm lucky that I had to do all these opportunities like in college before I really actually got to like do stand up, because like I feel like you don't really like do stand up until you're like going out like every night of the week or like 3 or 4 times a week. Because like I said, in college I was only doing it once a week, but I was still able to like build a set where I could, open for like Dr. Ken and stuff like that. So when I did the Dr. Ken show, it was probably like 1,100 people, which is great. That's unheard. That's no one at their like no one at our level should be performing in front of that many people. Like no
Yeah,
matter
that's an
that's
arena level show.
yeah, exactly. And like why the fuck should I be doing that? You know what I mean? But from that, so that was insane. I mean, of course, it was like all college kids and Dr. Ken's famous, so that's why there were so many people there. But it's like I should not have been. There's no reason that I should have been doing that. But so that was 1,100. So when I did the TEDx talk, it was probably like 800, 900 people, which so which again, insane thing to be like, oh, that's less people than 1,100. But like of course I was freaking out because it's so many people and it's like filmed and stuff like that. But I think just because I did them so close together, I was like, okay, I know I can not choke in front of this large amount of people in the past, so this time I won't. But then there was the added layer of it being filmed, right? So
Mhm.
I'm like, okay, so even if I bomb in front of 800 people, it's so what? But then on top of that, it's like, oh no, but it's filmed and it's going to be on YouTube for the rest of time. So that's the added layer that I was like, that's the part I was like more freaking out about than the amount of people. I would say is just the fact that it was like filmed. It was like a good event, and people. The weird thing is like at this TEDx event, like you've seen TED Talks where people like talk about like this sad story in their life and like what's
Mhm.
going on and how to make the world a better place. And then they're just like, here's a guy doing 5 minutes on being half Asian. And it's like, all right, hopefully they like me.
Mhm.
So, but it ended up going great. And yeah, I just felt like a little bit out of place because I was just fucking telling jokes
Yeah.
versus like being meaningful like everyone else was. But like I said, it worked out. So I have no regrets and I'm happy it did it.
Yep. Were you able to get any other comic opportunities out of that? Like any other gigs with Dr. Ken, or was it just like, hi, how you doing? Good luck.
Yeah, no further gigs from him really. But he was like a super chill guy, like very down to earth. Because I was thinking, I was like, he's gotta be one of like the most famous people, like because he's like a movie star. He's on like all like the every like show on like network television. So
Mhm.
for it to be that level of famous and to just like have a regular conversation with me is like so cool and so chill. So I mean, yeah, no further opportunities, but like I said, I was so early on in my stand-up career, like I wasn't even expecting anything. I was just so appreciative that he did talk to me and he was like super, super chill. But literally the nicest guy ever. It was awesome.
Nice. It's too bad that couldn't lead you to getting like a cameo on The Masked Singer.
I know. Here's the thing. I'm both a shitty dancer and a shitty singer, so I don't know. Maybe he could tell that about me from talking to me, but yeah, that would. That would be my first and only legitimate credit. So, but
Yep.
I would listen if they asked me to do it, I would fucking do it. I don't care.
Yeah. It's probably start like a new kind of show, like mask singer instead of like mask stand up.
Yeah, the masked micer, just like a kill Tony type of thing, but it's like masked and like five minutes of masked open mic comedy. It's not a bad idea.
And if the set doesn't go well, you can just keep the mask on.
Right, exactly. Yeah, exactly. That and then you have to wear it out to open mics for the rest of the week.
Yep. Just go out as Captain McCheese.
Right. Yeah. Captain McCheese and his 5 minutes of sex jokes.
Yep.
Exactly.
Yep. And did you start out in Minneapolis or did you start out in LA?
So I never really did stuff in LA. I would say when people ask, I usually say I started in Minneapolis because that's the first time I really started going like every like 3 or 4 times a week.
Mm-hmm.
Um, because like when I was doing it, like I said, when I was doing it in college, I count college as like my first year because like I said, I was probably doing it like once a month maybe in college, and I feel like you don't really see yourself grow or like you know as a stand up, especially like when you're first doing it for the first time, you don't know how to do anything. But especially when you're going once every month or two, you have no idea how like stand up works or what's really going on. So I did start in college, but I would say I really got going. Like I really actually started doing comedy consistently in Minneapolis.
Yep. Everyone has like their own definitions of like what is properly starting out in a stamp. Like, is your first open mic doing it like a couple of times a month or actually moving to an active scene?
Right, exactly. And people, here's what it is, and I'm the biggest, it's whatever people makes people feel good about themselves, that's when they started. So like me, I'm like, oh, I started in college, but that doesn't count because I'm like, oh, college was so long ago, I should be better by now. So I'm trying to rationalize why that doesn't count as like a year until I got to Minneapolis.
Mm-hmm.
So, and everyone does that, but yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And Minneapolis is like a great scene to start out in.
Yeah. Oh my God. Yeah. I think I mean obviously we're biased because we
Mm-hmm.
really got our starts there, but I always it and I'm not even like joking when I say this, like so many people you meet out here, like when you say you're from Minneapolis, they'll just fire off the names of like three hilarious Minneapolis comics. And there people have said it's like, oh, Minneapolis has such like a great comedy scene. Like we can tell because there's so many good comics that move here from Minneapolis. So no, I don't think anyone said that about me, but like other comedians from Minneapolis, people say that about all the time when you say you're from there. And yeah, I think one of the big things is that like you have that A Club Acme, which is like nationally known and like comics of the highest level praise Acme, and then at the same time you have like the indie clubs right below it where like if you're
Mm-hmm.
not in at Acme, you can still get stage time there in front of like great audiences. So I
Yep.
think at every level there's clear growth and like there's so many opportunities that you can do. So I think that's why people from Minneapolis tend to work out and be very good.
And most people who start in Minneapolis, like Acme is like their first open mic that they hit.
Yeah, it's so crazy because and it's cool to see too that like the Minneapolis comics who have been doing it for like 15 20 years, they'll have like they'll take a picture of the first time they ever did Acme, like the open mic, and then you see some of the names on there. You're like, "Oh shit, this person's famous, this person's successful." Like it's super cool. So yeah, I can't imagine because like the Acme open mic for like people who don't know, it's like 200, 300 people every single week. So
Mm-hmm.
to do that your first time ever doing comedy, which was not at all my experience, is just I can't fathom that. That's so crazy. So yeah, it's a great place to start.
Yeah, it also gives people like a good first taste of like, oh, this is how things should be versus like going to other open mics and you're just fighting to get the crowd's attention.
Right, exactly. And that's kind of like the debate people have. It's like is it better to start in like a smaller scene like Minneapolis, or is it better to just start in like a New York or LA or Austin where, the mics might be tougher, it might be much harder to get stage time and like perform in front of crowds. But the earlier you move to that city, the less time you don't have to start over like when if you go start in a small scene and then move there. But then on the flip side, when you have Minneapolis, like you said, you get the real experience of what it's supposed to be like versus,
Hmm.
really grinding out the mics and trying to get people's attention. 100%.
Yep. And I noticed you did a couple of comedy festivals.
Yes, yes, I've done a few. I've done I would say the what's the first one? The first one I did was Motor City, which was in Detroit. I've also done 10,000 Laughs in Minneapolis, North Carolina Comedy Festival, and then recently a couple weeks ago I did the West End Comedy Festival in Atlanta.
Mhm.
So, yeah.
Yep. And has the comedy festivals been helpful for to accelerate or project your comedy career?
I would say so. I don't know how much they've like accelerated my career, and I think comedy festivals are like what you get out of them, I
Mhm.
think they can be very helpful if you like utilize them to like your full extent. Um um so for a lot of them, it's really just like meeting people
Mhm.
of the local scene, trying to do well at like the local clubs or venues you're doing it at, so like you can go back to that city like later on. And then in addition, they also have like the festivals have comics from all over the US and sometimes even
Mhm.
the world. Like I met people from like Canada and stuff like that, and Australia at these festivals. So, making connections with them and meeting them. So if you're ever in their part of the town, maybe they'll have like connections to like their shows and stuff like that. So I mean, like I said, so you could go to festivals and just like do your shows and like just go
Mhm.
back to your hotel room, or but like it is really what you put in, where like
Yep.
I've gone to festivals where like I barely talk to anyone and I'm like, that was such a waste of my time, why did I do that? But then other festivals where you like make friends and like you make it a fun week or weekend, and from there you build relationships, you make new friends, which is always great. And then from there, hopefully you can help people out in your local scene, and then people help you out if you're ever there. So
Yep. And I think they work. But I think it's like an attitude. I think festivals work if you have like that attitude, like, okay, what do I have to give versus like what they can give me.
right. Exactly. I mean, I think first and foremost, the you want to do well at the shows. That's like
Hmm.
why you're that. You want to prove to people, because like you can make all the connections you want, but then if you go up there and bomb, people are gonna be like, do I want this guy to, do I want this guy? Do I want to recommend this guy if he comes from my town? But yeah, first and foremost, you want to like do well at the shows, obviously, because that's why you're there. These people were nice enough to, a lot of the festivals will sometimes like at least put you up while you're out there. So you're like, these people are nice enough to have me. I know so many people applied, and I was lucky enough to get in. So you got to perform your best, obviously. But then, yeah, but then, like you said, from there, it's kind of like what you have to give for the festival. So yeah,
Yeah.
it's there's a lot of festivals now, and you never know what's like which ones are going to be helpful or not to
Hmm.
you. But I think
And also there's a
go.
lot of them that charge like got into like 20 to 30 bucks to get even to get considered.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. A lot of the ones have a application fee just to like help pay for the festival and stuff like that.
Mhm.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So, but it really is like, I don't think there's any downsides to doing festival other than like, yeah, financial costs are definitely a downside because like you said, there's a submission fee to even just apply, even if you like don't even get in, there's a submission fee to apply. And then on top of that, you get a lot of the times you have to pay your way there, and sometimes some festivals don't put you up. So, like I said, the financial cost is definitely the biggest barrier to entry. But worst case scenario, if you get into a festival and you're down whatever 300, $400 for the weekend, at least you get to meet some great comics and watch some good comedy. So
Mhm.
that's worst case scenario, I think.
And
But
that's just like another.
I haven't done any bad festivals, so I don't know. Maybe it could be so much worse.
I think that's just like another example in life, like where it's people who have more money have the advantage.
Yes. Oh, 100%.
Mhm.
It sucks that that is the way, but like, yeah, you could, if you're bad at comedy, but you're very rich, you could apply to literally every festival
Yeah.
every year with no issue. And then, it's maybe your tape hits with one person, and then,
Hmm.
you go from there. But I agree. Yeah. The more money you have, the more likely, or the more easy, I guess it is. In a certain sense of for anything, but it sucks that comedy is, you're right, included in that
Hmm.
sort of thing. for sure.
Yeah, like one lesson you learn, one lesson I definitely learned is like, yeah, there's a lot of ways you can con your way onto the stage, but you can't con people when you're on it.
Yeah, that is, and I think that's why so many of us like doing comedy is because it's like, um, it's once it's just you and the audience, there's no, you can't bullshit from there. There's nothing, and that's when we're all equals, you know what I mean? Like you can have
Mhm.
so much more money than me, but the second it's just you and the microphone, it's like, okay, that's like showtime. It's like, are you legit, or were you just like a rich person who figured out a way to get on a show?
Also, the
And then
hijack the algorithm.
right, exactly. Yeah, yeah, yeah. So I mean, it's things like that where it's like, and I think that's what's most frustrating about like comedy right now is like it's never been a better time to be a comedian and never been a worse time to be a comedian with like social media and stuff like
Mhm.
that. But yeah, of course, like you said, I think the reason we like doing stand up is because at the end of the day, we're all technically equals when it comes to like actually performing. You know, it's like who is the funniest is what it comes down to. It's not who is the richest or who knows the most people in the industry, right? It's who can do the best at performing.
Yep. Let's see. Have you been able to do any road gigs in the past couple years? And, like any experience, like just trying around, like seeing, like, oh, these jokes work well here, but it's different, like in small town, rural areas.
Yeah, I think I did a road gig recently in Cape May, New Jersey. So it's like 3 hours outside of the city. It's like a beach town. I'd say richer, whiter type of town in New Jersey. And it's funny because in Minneapolis you'd do road gigs a decent amount of time, and like you'd really anytime you go like 30 minutes outside of like the Minneapolis city center, you get like a more rural type of like right-leaning type of crowd, you know,
Mhm.
like in like a similar thing where it's like a more white and less diverse town. So you have like a lot of experience performing to like those people in addition to like the, you know, the young liberals per se that are living in Minneapolis. But in New York, I had just been doing New York sets the entire time. So, you know, New York is very like, you know, smart, liberal, kind of like joke style writing. So when I took those to New Jersey, it was like kind of like a shock in my face that like they like didn't understand what I was saying or like they
Mhm.
didn't get it. And but that's exactly why you should be doing road gigs like that is because like you're I mean, I don't know. My goals specifically aren't just to perform in New York. You know, I love to do shows all over New York, but of course I want to take my act on the road and like travel all over the US. And so it's good to
Yep.
do those shows where you're not performing for your regular audience because then you really get to see, okay, what works everywhere versus what just works in the city for
Mhm.
a certain demographic of people.
And also the quote unquote make a decent living at a comedy, like you have to travel on because from the consumer perspective, like how often do you actually go out to a comedy show?
Right, right, exactly. Yeah, that's exactly what it is. So the money, and that's where all the money is. All the money that I've made doing comedy in New York really has been from like the one or two road gigs that I have done. So it is you do have to get out on the road. But I mean, I think that's when comedy becomes the most fun though, because like you're refining your jokes in this like usually when you're doing comedy, it's in like a liberal sort of bubble because it's usually in like a city that's blue. And being able to like take those jokes out to the more red parts of the country to see like what works and what doesn't. I think that's the most fun because
Yep.
the
And
whole
also you
point of
get
like
that little bit more of that tension, which is like key entertainment value.
right, of course. Yeah, yeah, exactly. Where if you bring up, you know, abortion in like the city, people are gonna like cheer and like they'll be on board right away. But you just broach the topic in a more conservative area. Like you said, there's that tension there, but then that makes it more exciting because you're like, okay, I built all this tension. Is my joke good enough to ease it and make them laugh with it? So I agree. That is half the fun is building that more tension for sure.
Awesome. And let's see. Did you grow up in California?
So I was born in California, but I only lived there for like 2 years. So I literally don't remember like any part about like living there at all. So I still have some family out in LA, so I'll visit like once a year, but I haven't done much comedy there. And yeah, I don't really remember living there. So apologies.
Yeah, I just took like one trip to LA with my brother, and I noticed you had a picture at Pink's Hot Dogs. I ate
Oh
there
yeah, yeah,
once
yeah.
too.
That's I was just so I was there over for Christmas. My family spent Christmas there. And then yeah, Pink's hot dogs. I'd never been before, which is crazy because I usually go once a year. And I love like shitty like street food.
Mhm.
And I mean Pink's was like so I was like because my uncle lives out there and I usually see him once a year. And I was like, I literally was eating. I was like, how the hell have you not taken me here? Like, you know, I love like the shittiest, like greasiest foods. Like, I was almost offended that it had taken me 26 years to eat Pink's hot dogs because it was fantastic. And it's
Yep.
definitely going to be one of those places where like anytime I go back, I will be eating there. So,
Yep. I'm also eating off of food trucks in Austin.
right, I was going to say, yeah, what do you think of the food in Austin? Is it as is like the barbecue and stuff as good as everyone says it is?
I haven't been able to actually eat out as much because, well, like the thing is, like once you become like a local, you don't really, you pretty much eat out like everyone else. And
Mhm.
same thing in Minneapolis, where I was just like, okay, I just only hit the comedy spots and like the regular like Walmart spots.
Yeah, yeah, that's fair. Yeah, I guess when you live in a city, it's different versus when you like go visit a city, like
Mhm.
to visit it, you're like, okay, here's all the restaurants that we need to hit because we're only here for a finite amount of time. But you can go to any of these places whenever you want. So I bet there's less reason for you to go there.
Yep. Sixth Street is
But
like a very good hangout spot.
mhm. Where's is there any like comedy clubs like on Sixth Street
Yeah,
or
there's five clubs in the Sixth Street area.
oh wow. Oh
Like
shit,
you
I didn't
can,
I didn't
like
know
there's
that.
Creek in the Cave, there's Vulcan, there's the Velveeta Room, the Comedy Mothership, and the Sunset Strip
Oh wow. So that all of them are on like the same street.
in the same like 2 to 3 block area.
Oh my God, that's that I feel like even because like New York, everyone's like, oh, it's so great. You can go to all these clubs because they're so close together. That sounds like even closer in proximity than New York. So that's, I mean, I knew Austin was like obviously like booming for comedy. I didn't know they were
Mhm.
like legitimately that close to like that close together. So that's very, I mean, that's so cool. But that also kind of sucks because we were saying earlier is like, oh, if I don't want to run into someone, you
Mhm.
might just because they're all within, everyone's like within a 2 to 3 block radius. So.
Yeah.
What's your favorite one to hang out at? Do you have a favorite one?
I enjoy hanging out at the creek and
Yeah.
been I also enjoy doing like shows at Vulcan. That's
Hmm.
has like a nice heavy metal hang to it.
Yeah, that's really cool. And I think that's what's cool about again, I've never been to like Austin or like I don't know a lot about the comedy there, but it does seem like it's since it's like booming so much, there's like an infinite amount of play. Like there's a club and like a place for like everyone and every type of comedy too. Like you said, one's more like yeah, metal-y than another one, which is super cool. So
Yep. And
yeah,
the
I would
toughest,
love.
obviously, like the toughest club to get into right now is the Mothership.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, which makes sense because, okay, once you attach Joe Rogan to anything, obviously, how
Mhm.
many people are going to like flock, like just like consumers alone. I mean, when you have the biggest podcast of all time, it's going to, and that guy's running it, obviously, like consumers are going to flock there immediately. And with that, everyone's going to be like, oh, this is the hottest club in town. We have to try and get in there. So it's like all of that culminating into one where it's selling out every night, which is great. But then for like the comics, because it's selling out every night, it's like, oh, it's so much harder to get in because now everyone knows it's selling out.
Yeah, it sort of reminds you like how tough it was for people to get into Acme. Like you just have to show up every week. But the Mothership,
Yeah,
they have like a lottery for the open mic like every Sunday and Monday, and like there's like almost 200 people who stand in line to sign up.
that's crazy. And just picturing like a scene like Austin, like 5 years ago, you probably would have never said there'd be 200 people signing up for one open mic, not even just 200 people in the scene, just being like 200 people sign up for one open mic is crazy. But that, I mean, that goes to show you how great the scene is there that they built a place where
Mhm.
200 people want to do one open mic, which is crazy. Have you ever got on by the way on the mothership mic?
There was one time in last October I was able to get on, had a decent set,
Nice. Hell yeah, that's cool. That's super cool.
and
That's
they also have Kill Tony at the Mothership.
right. Which did you? I remember you did kill Tony. Was that the one you did? Was it the one at the mothership?
No, I did the one at Vulcan about 2 years ago.
Okay, so this was before the mothership was a thing. That's right. But I do remember you got on, and it was after you had moved to Austin.
Yep.
How did you like doing Kill Tony?
I enjoyed doing the set, but the part was a bit awkward.
Yeah, I feel like it's hard being because anyone can like, a minute of stand up is like nothing for us, but then actually having to talk about ourselves and stuff like that to
Mhm.
like famous people, I'd be shitting my pants up there for sure. I don't know how you can because you seem to keep it together just fine during your interview, but like when you're talking to like these people you look up to and that are famous,
Mhm.
but are also like shitting on you and being mean to you, I'd be like, oh, I don't know what to say.
Yeah, the
So.
interview portion like reminded me like my early years of stamps. Like you watch a thing like, oh, I can do that. I got this figured out. Like the sort of like the same way like when you watch like a play during school, thinking like we all want to sit down and be entertained, but also in the back of our head we have that little bit of envy, saying like, oh, I can do that.
Yeah, yeah, of course.
And then you get on
Yeah,
stage and just figure like, oh wait, there's more to it than that.
yeah, exactly. I feel like, yeah, because anytime someone does stand up, I don't want to speak for everyone, but I feel like a lot of us when we first did stand up, we had seen stand up and we're like, that's definitely something we could do. And then you do it and you're like, oh shit, it's not what it's so much harder and there's so
Yep.
much more that goes into it than what I just saw. So I bet it's the same way of like doing like interviews with people like that and riffing with people like that, where you're like, I could probably like you're like, I'm funny enough in stand up. I could probably riff with these people, and then
Mhm.
they're just hitting you from all the angles, so you don't know how to react.
Yep. And I'm really glad I led with the autism for the interview portion.
Yeah, yeah, you gotta set the stage so they know
Mhm.
so they know why you are the way that you are, of course.
Yep. Let's see. Trying to think of what else we can talk about. I think yeah, we covered the basics, and I know my brother has to leave pretty soon. I think we covered pretty much everything I wanted to cover up.
Yeah, any if you have any other questions just about me or about like New York, I'm happy to answer. Or if you want me to, I have a couple of questions for you just about like Austin and stuff like that. Or I just want to I'm curious how Austin is like
All
because
right,
I've
we'll
heard.
reverse the question.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Because you go like I said, 3 years ago, everyone's like, "Oh, Austin's gonna be the next LA," but like those were just rumblings and stuff like that. And then you see people like big people start to move to Austin, and like
Hmm.
things slowly start to happen. And then now it's just like you said, 5 clubs in like a 2 to 3 block radius is insane. So I'm curious about your experience.
Yep. Well, Austin has like a lot of a comedy enthusiasm. It's still like a very newish scene, so yeah, people are getting like the LA experience down here.
Yeah. I was gonna say, yeah, and it's like such a I feel like people want to go like it's so much of a destination now. Like people would visit Austin just to go to the mothership. You know what I mean? Like
Mhm.
that would be one of the kind of like the Comedy Cellar, how like if tourists come to New York, they're like, oh, we have to go to the Comedy Cellar. That's just the thing to do. And the fact that like Austin, Texas is a place like that is crazy, but it's very cool to
Mhm.
see.
Yeah, it's much like LA. I'm like, my recommendation is like put 2 to 3 years like in a smaller city before you like move out to Austin
Hmm.
and also LA and New York in general.
Yeah, for sure. And it's funny too, because like I hope this doesn't offend anyone in Chicago. I've never done comedy in Chicago, but it's like I feel like people don't even talk about Chicago as like the third best city. Like you heard Chicago, like before Austin was you when Austin was just like a smaller, Texas scene or whatever, you would hear it was like good comedy. But now when people are like, you gotta move to like if you want to make it big in comedy, you gotta move to LA, New York, or Austin. Like no one says Chicago anymore, which is kind of crazy.
I think Chicago is more more known for improv than comedy.
That is true too. Yeah, when you have like the second city and IO
Mhm.
Chicago there, yeah, it is more of the place to move for improv. But I feel like in terms of what I've just heard from people, like rumblings of like comedians, I feel like people sort of list Austin as like that third city to move to, like because they do talk about it like LA, and like you said, 200 people lining up for an open mic on a Monday. That sounds very LA, New Yorky to me. So.
Mhm. Yeah, Chicago's also a good scene where you can sort of build up. I remember I took a trip to Chicago with Max Chapman and Corey Nelson about in 2019, about oh, was that 5 years ago now?
Yeah, yeah, 5 years ago. Yeah, right before COVID.
Yep. Yeah, I did a lot of traveling that year. I also went to LA that year and Chicago. Who
What's
knew
your
that
what's
was
your
a good
favorite what's your favorite non-Austin place to perform? Like city?
let's see, I enjoyed LA.
Yeah, yeah, I bet. Yeah, it's LA is super fun. And it's just a great like a good city.
Mhm.
The people are fine, whatever. But the city is amazing.
And also had a good time in Chicago too. Like we had a like me, Max, and Corey Nelson had good sets at the mic open mic that they had at Second City, which was what we heard like, oh, that was going to be a challenge because their open mic was in one of their classrooms.
Oh, interesting. Oh, that's funny. Yeah, yeah, because that's right. Because I know they have like the Second City stage, but then they have like
Mhm.
little classrooms and stuff where they teach improv classes. I would have assumed the mic was on like the performing performance stage, but I guess it makes sense because they're probably doing improv on the stage.
Mhm. And the
So,
I did speech. I was involved in like the speech club in high school, so performing back in that classroom, like I seen this like brought back memories like performing speech and speech tournaments.
yeah, there you go. Yeah, you felt you're like a very familiar feeling of like, oh, I've done public speaking in like a shitty classroom with like desks and chairs and stuff. So you're probably right at home with that.
Yeah, and also like some of the sets were sort of like bringing back memories of like seeing fellow classmates do public speaking. Like, oh, this is you're not as good as you thought you were going to be.
Right, exactly. It does
Mhm.
almost feel like because I comics do have that like high schooler I'm better than you guys confidence. So
Mhm.
seeing an open mic in that like classroom setting probably felt exactly like high school, where
Mhm.
you're like, oh, we should bully this guy because he sucks.
Yeah, but it's fun like seeing Corey Nelson had like a very good set that night, and so did Max Chapman. Like Max did this great thing where he played around with like the chalkboard. He wrote
Oh,
out one
that's
of his
funny.
jokes on there.
Yeah, I've never seen someone like utilize like the stage area and like not even like the props, but just like what's like going on with like the stage and like the stool and the mic stand. I've never seen someone like utilize it so like smartly and funny as he has. I remember he did this bit one time at Sisyphus where there's like there's probably like 15 people in the crowd, so it's a pretty empty open mic night, but he like got on stage and like he didn't say a word. He just looked upset. And so he went to sit down in the audience and he was like sort of like looking at the stage to like see like kind of like check it out and stuff like that. And then he had like an audience member go on stage and like move like the chair and like the mic stand around and he's like, no, no, move it back that way. And he'd be like, actually, no, no, move it that way. And so he like had this audience member like position the mic stand in a perfect like spot like from like and Max is sitting in the audience the whole time telling him what to do while this guy is on stage. And so the guy finally perfectly positions the mic stand for Max in this like one spot on the stage after moving it around for like 2 minutes. And Max goes back on stage and just like moves the mic stand to the back and starts doing jokes.
Yeah,
It was fucking hilarious. And I mean I love shit like that where it's like
it
you don't
sounds like a stand-up set that be performed by Quentin Tarantino.
right, right. Yeah, exactly. It felt like very like movie directory has to be like perfect. But then you have the added twist at the end where he just fucking he moves everything around. So the guy was like, well, I just wasted 2 minutes for nothing. But yeah, that I've seen Max do stuff like that, and it's always very funny.
Nice.
Yes.
Yeah, and let's see, you've been in Minneapolis like for a year after I left. How's do you know how like how the scene is doing in Minneapolis?
As of right now, I'm not as I definitely don't have my finger on the pulse as much as I normally did because it's been like I said, almost over 9 months since I moved out here, but everything was going, yeah, very, very well. I feel like after you left and sort of before I moved out here, because like I think the 10,000 Laughs Festival started up
Mhm.
again, which is such like I think that's really good because it showcases like the Minneapolis like talent and like club scene and like how good it is because you can say your scene is good for comedy, but then when you have people traveling in and they actually see how good your clubs are and see
Mhm.
watch the local comics, I think that's like great for a scene. So I think 10,000 Laughs coming back is definitely huge for Minneapolis and it's like a great showcase of all the talent. And yeah, there never been there's like 5 clubs you can go up at, including Acme, just within like the Minneapolis St. Paul area. So I would say it's booming. And you know, Max is one of those people who has like a great indie show. Like the indie show scene is great as well. And Don't Tell really started popping up towards the end of my tenure in Minneapolis. So
Yep.
that's also such a good thing for smaller scenes.
Yep. And I remember like last year, like when I came back to Minneapolis for my short visit, we did the tomato show together.
Yes, that's right. I was like, I feel like I did a show the last time I saw Kelly was at like a show at Terminal, which I don't
Mhm.
know. I always associated with you at Terminal anyways, because I think wasn't your like last night in Minneapolis, like we like roasted you, like you sat through the whole mic at Terminal, and then we had the last
Yep.
like minute was spent roasting you.
Yep. Did like the for what I call like the first ever open mic roast where it was just me sitting through the open mic and getting roast and then roasting back and forth. And that last
Yeah, yeah, I
the
remember that. And then the next time I had seen you was in Terminal again for the tomato show. So
Mhm.
that was funny. But yeah, like I said, that's just an example. Like there's so many fun open mics, and then the indie scene is really popping as well. So that's really cool. That's I think Minneapolis is in good hands, even though the 2 stars, yourself and me, are no longer there. I think Minneapolis will survive just fine.
Yeah. Well, we had to graduate and bring the Minneapolis experience to the other scenes.
Right, exactly. We have to show everyone how good Minneapolis is. So we're like spreading the word of the Lord
Mhm.
across America.
All right. Well, that's been our time. Thank you so much, Cal, for taking the time to talk with me. And
Yes, thank you, Kelly. This was awesome. Congrats again on 10 episodes. This was super fun. I'm glad we got to catch up a little bit. We should definitely catch up again too. Let me know if you're ever in like New York or anything. But sorry again, I was late, but I had a fucking blast. So thank you for having me.
all right, no problem. All right, this is the end of the episode. And yeah, we'll end it right here very abruptly.